Welcome to the Affiliated Monitors Expert Podcast, hosted by Tom Fox on the Compliance Podcast Network. Today I have back with me Don Stern. Don's the Managing Director of Corporate Monitoring and Consulting at Affiliated Monitors. And today we're going to pick up on, an incredibly important topic that Don articulated on an earlier episode, and that is how M&A can benefit from independent assessment. So Don, thank you for taking the time to visit with me again.
You're welcome, Tom. Glad to be here.
So, as I said, you really started this conversation off on an earlier episode, and I thought it was so important. I appreciate that you can take the time to visit with me a little bit more. But I wanted to start with, at what point in the M&A process would it be helpful for a company to arrange for an independent third-party assessment of the targets, now part of your company's subsidiary or other business units, compliance and ethics program?
Well, I think I guess I would say as early as practicable. At some point, the acquiring company begins to, think about an acquisition. There may be some preliminary discussions, sometimes at the CEO level, sometimes at the CFO level. And so at that point, teams are assembled on both sides. There might be a due diligence room where documents are made available for the acquiring company to review under a non-disclosure agreement. There could be team meetings where teams from one company meet with teams from the other company. And, what I've seen is that sometimes during that process, I'll call them ethical or compliance issues pop up towards the end because the companies are not really focused on it. The company that's about to be acquired or merged is certainly not volunteering those issues, and the acquiring company isn't really asking the right questions and looking. And I can remember one example where we got involved, but frankly, it was very, very late in the day. It was the M&A process is always to some extent a fire drill. Everyone's working very hard, compressed time schedules, trying to do a lot in a very short period of time. But an issue had popped up, and we were brought in to take a look at it. But frankly, the train had left the station. Everyone was geared up to do the deal. And it was not something that probably would have stopped the deal in any event, but it probably would have altered or could have altered the terms of the deal if the facts which later were uncovered were really known prior to the acquisition. Let me give you an example of that. There's certainly instances where when an issue is apparent based upon a due diligence pre-merger, that the companies will have to negotiate, for example, a set-aside where a certain amount of money might be put in escrow to anticipate the possibility that there might be some enforcement action. There might be some self-reporting at that stage to a government agency. It could make a difference in terms of what the management structure looks like down the road in terms of the merged company, because it could be that, and I'm just using this by way of hypothetical, the national sales manager might not be the right person for the job based upon a due diligence which takes a look at certain practices of the sales organization which he or she was in charge of. So to return to your question, I would say as soon as possible to be part of the team. They're going to be accountants, investment bankers, lawyers, IT personnel, sales personnel, and ethics and compliance has got to be at the table. It's got to be part of that process, part of that team asking the right questions and doing the follow-up and doing the due diligence. And having that being done really by a third-party independent is, I think, helpful because we're not really, our job is to independently and faithfully report back what we've found. We don't have any stock options. We don't have any bonus that we're going to get once the acquisition takes place. We are truly independent.
I think that's something that most M&A specialists really don't consider, which is what you just articulated, the independent nature of the review. But I wanted to ask, in your experience, in addition to helping the acquiring company, does the independent nature of your review help you actually garner more information from the target, or even after the deal is closed, from the new business unit or subsidiary?
I would say yes. I mean, I think everyone, certainly pre-acquisition, everyone has their guard up and they're a little wary about anybody coming in and asking a question, but they have an obligation to be truthful and honest. And if they're not, and if representations are made either to us or directly to the acquiring company, everyone knows they run the risk of litigation down the road. But we have found, and I've done this, by the way, just by way of contrast, Tom, I've done this in my role as my old role as a lawyer involved in some of these deals, and now as a truly independent third-party compliance professional, and taking a look at the assessments. And there is a difference. I find that people open up more. They're more willing to be forthcoming when somebody outside either company comes in and is asking the questions, really in kind of a non-threatening way. We're just looking for the facts, and we're looking to provide some help for the new entity if the acquisition goes through. So the short answer to your question is yes, there's a difference, and I find that we are able to get more information than I think we would otherwise get if we were not independent.
Don, I wanted to ask if you could provide some specific examples where an independent assessment may have actually helped mitigate ethical problems deriving from merger and acquisition further down the road.
Well, I think I alluded to one earlier in this segment, and that is where there was the hint of an ethics and compliance program, a corruption issue, but there was really inadequate time to fully get for anybody to get their arms around it. And if there had been more time, if we and others had focused on these issues earlier in the process, I think it would have both helped define the terms of the deal, but also helped with the integration process. But even more broadly, even when there is no specific issue, the more that the acquiring company understands about the culture, about the problems, the issues that it faces, the better it can do it. I mean, the classic example, to some respect, is in the IT area. So the IT professionals get together and they talk about integrating their computer systems and integrating their IT professionals. And so they know on day one, here's the plan. The deal is going to be, inked on January 1st, and here's the plan for the next 30 days as to how we're going to integrate our IT programs, between company A and company B. There is rarely the equivalent plan when it comes to compliance, ethics, and certainly integrating the cultures. And I would suggest that if you had such a plan, you can avoid some of those problems because people would expect, they know that we're going to do the training in week 3, and we're going to be doing the focus groups in week 4, and we're going to be going out to the branch office in Toledo in week 5, and then we're going to India and talk to the senior people in India. So if there's a specific plan, an integration plan, which is carried out, that will, I think, mitigate a lot of the problems. And of course, the one thing we haven't talked about, there may come a point at which and Rod Grandin alluded to this in one of the earlier segments, that maybe even with good due diligence, pre-acquisition, you may not identify all the problems. And really, when you bear down post-acquisition, those problems might arise. And then there's a question about what do you do? Obviously, you want to remediate as promptly and as effectively as possible. But there may be a question of reporting to the Department of Justice or to other regulatory or enforcement agencies. And as you know, Tom, one of the earlier in August, so about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the Department of Justice made clear that their FCPA policies for reporting and giving, if you will, major credit to companies that self-report FCP violations was explicitly made to be covered in the mergers and acquisition space. And the department was very candid. They said that they're looking to incentivize acquirers to conduct post-closing due diligence and report any significant problems to the Department of Justice. And if the companies report, it would essentially create a presumption that there would be a declination for prosecution. So there are huge potential benefits in having an effective, thorough, and fulsome post-merger due diligence process. And I think as part of that, the Department of Justice, and I think good practice suggests that at least some of that be done by a third-party independent, because you're going to get the best information.
It's a great point for us to end on, Don, that what we used to call safe harbor has actually been memorialized now by Justice Department officials as a part of the FCPA corporate enforcement policy, and making it a presumption of a declination if you take these steps in the mergers and acquisition context. So thank you for bringing that up. And unfortunately, we're near the end of our time today, but I've been visiting with Don Stern. Don, thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Same here, Tom. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I hope you've enjoyed this special 5-part exploration of assessing ethics and compliance in the mergers and acquisition context. If you'd like any more information from Affiliated Monitors, you can contact them through their website, affiliatedmonitors.com. Affiliated Monitors, of course, was the sponsor of this podcast series. I look forward to bringing you another series, and I hope you will join me again on another podcast from the Compliance Podcast Network.